All right. Welcome, everyone. We are live. Thank you so much for joining us. For those I haven't yet met, I'm Danielle Patterson, Executive Director of Family Office at ISS Market Intelligence and the founder of Family Office Access. I'd love to start with some context before we jump right into today's conversation. Family offices are increasingly engaging with venture capital, not just as an asset class, but as a way to expose rising generations to innovation, build relationships with founders, and to create long-term optionality in their portfolios. At the same time, venture can feel opaque. The math is different, the timelines can cause confusion, and the failure rate looks uncomfortable on paper. So today, we want to move beyond theory and bring you into lived experience. And to do that, I couldn't be more honored to be speaking with David Cohen and Brad Feld, who have spent the last 20 years building one of the earliest and most influential accelerator systems in the world. Techstar has helped launch over 5,000 companies. Those companies have raised over 30 billion. There have been over 600 exits and 29 unicorns. But what I'm most interested in is not the stats, it's the pattern recognition that comes from seeing that many founders and that many cycles. So to start, I would love to welcome David Cohen, who really needs no introduction, but he's the founder and CEO of Techstars and has played such a meaningful role in shaping the startup ecosystem globally. He's a lifelong entrepreneur, a builder at heart, and someone who has spent the last 2 decades helping founders access capital, mentorship, and the community they need to grow. What I especially appreciate is that his work has always gone beyond company building alone. He's been deeply committed to strengthening the broader ecosystem and expanding opportunities through initiatives like the Techstars Foundation. And joining David is Brad Feld. Brad is the partner and co-founder at Foundry, the co-founder of Techstars, and one of the most respected voices in venture. He has helped generations of founders and investors better understand how venture works, not just through investing, but through his writing, his board service, and a long-standing commitment to the entrepreneurial community. There is a steadiness and a clarity to the way that Brad shows up, and he has made such a trusted voice in the space. So we are so fortunate to have the both of you here. And I will say it now so you can all hold me accountable. They both have made this precious time in their busy day. They have a hard stop because they have a board meeting at 2. So we'll make sure that we wrap things up today. But I am just honored to have you here. We're going to jump right in so we can make the most of our time together. And my hope really for today and why we do these live is so that we can keep our conversation candid. I would love to incorporate questions as they come up. So we have Cody backstage. He'll be screening those things on stage, and really excited for us all to learn collectively about venture and how to engage it in a meaningful way. So to kick things off, I would love, David, let's start with you. Before we get too tactical, just kind of rewind and hear on a personal level, how did you and Brad first meet, and what were these early decisions that helped shape Techstars?
Sure. Thanks, Danielle, and thanks for saying all those nice things about us. I'm sure I speak for Brad when I say that. Maybe half of them are true, so that's awesome. Um, I think I have been a founder or entrepreneur my whole life. I've had one job interview. I always like to say I'm undefeated in job interviews, 1-0, and then started companies, just creating companies, and had some luck and some success, doing that, and also had some failure doing that, and started angel investing, and um, kind of recognized that it seemed like it was going to be a great way to turn like a medium-sized fortune into a smaller one. It wasn't very satisfying. It was pretty dissatisfying, actually, to sort of meet somebody in a coffee shop, write a check, and not talk to them a lot, not see them a lot, not be able to help them much until the next time they needed money, is when I'd hear from them again. So it kind of felt broken, and came up with this concept of Techstars, which is, I think, my fourth startup, and it's 20 years old now. I hope my last one as well. And reached out to someone that I had been reading, Brad's blog at the time, and sort of knew him by reputation, and he happened to live in the same town as me in Boulder, Colorado. And asked for a meeting and wanted to share this idea of Techstars to try to make the startup community in Boulder better and to do angel investing maybe a smarter way. And it was really easy to get a meeting with Brad. It only took me 4 months to get a 15-minute meeting on his calendar. Slid a little half sheet of paper across the table that day and said, "This is the concept." And Brad, in Brad fashion, said, "Oh, if that's going to help the community and it's going to be fun, let's do it." And decided he wanted to invest as he said at the time, he made sure I wasn't a crook or a flake because he just met me. And I think 20 years later, he's still trying to figure that out. But for the most part, it seems to be going okay. And it was just this new idea at the time to bring a bunch of founders to Boulder, where we were, surround them with mentors, and invest in them, and see what happened. And quite a lot has happened since then.
Wow. I love hearing it through your words, and what a cool journey. I love to think how my life might have changed. I was born and raised in California, so I went to a UC school. I was a banana slug, but Boulder, it was like my first choice. So pretty cool. That's where it all began between you two. And Brad, I'd love to kick it over to you and first, welcome and thank you. And just to hear some of your early recollections, when you first met David and he had this idea. Tell me about what that looked like to you.
Well, the time frame was 2006, and in 2006, angel investing and early stage seed investing was sort of starting again after the fallout from the internet bubble. 2003, 2004, there started to be activity again, but it was still pretty ice cold in a lot of places. Still very, very hard for a new founder to raise any amount of money. I've been through 2 angel investing cycles where, when I define angel investing, I'm talking about investing in very early stages with my own money. One was 1994 to 96. After I sold my first company and before I co-founded my first venture fund. And the second was in 2006, 2005, 2006, before we started, 2006, 2007, before we started Foundry Group, but after the prior firm that I had started had stopped investing. And in both of those time periods, the activity was building in terms of investment. But the dynamic of an individual, especially someone like me that had a big network and was high demand and had plenty of existing companies, my ability to sort of navigate the individual angel investment landscape was tough. And there was such an incredible lack of capital. Mm-hmm. And there was an incredible information asymmetry between the investors and the founders. So the founders had very little information, knowledge about how to do stuff, especially at the seed stage. Pre-seed as a language didn't even exist at that point. Oh, wow. And then on the other side, most investors, some were good, but many of them were really crappy investors. And they didn't really understand the difference between the word angel and devil. And it's called angel for a reason. And so when David presented the idea of Techstars to me as trying to approach this very early stage investing, so don't think about it necessarily as angel, right, or seed or pre-seed, but investing at the very beginning, the very inception of the company. In 2006, when I encountered David and this idea, my response was, this could be pretty cool. And part of it also for me, I like to try things. I like to be immersed in them. I like to learn from them and then build an idea around it. And then once I have the idea and that idea becomes more solidified, then do something with it. I think way too many people, especially in the technology industry and frankly in the investing industry, sort of skim the surface. They theorize a little bit too much, or they follow what other people are saying rather than form their own point of view through experience, through doing. And so for my frame of reference, it's like, okay, here's an experiment. I like David, like this might be stupid. I'm willing to risk some money and some time, and let's see where it goes. And that's how it got started.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, what a journey. And the fact that 20 years later, it's still going. I'm sure it has evolved in incredible
Well,
ways and you've learned so many lessons.
a key point of that is, it's another good example of the very inception of something. If you had said to either of us in that meeting, here's what Techstars is going to look like 20 years from now, we would have just burst out laughing.
Yeah.
It was kind of inconceivable conceptually to us. We didn't have an aspirational goal of anything. We just had like the seed of an idea that we were going to play around with and see where it went.
And kind of hearing Brad talk about the why behind it, do you think that, the reason for the success is your willingness to help people?
Is that aimed at me or Brad?
Both of
I'll
you.
take it.
Both have built
I think
into
that's
a successful relationship.
I think that's part of it. I mean, I think there's a set of cultural values that it turned out that I think Brad and I and others that have been involved in Techstars shared. And today I think people may know it as give first is kind of the cultural philosophy and social norm around Techstars. Not something we invented. Brad's been talking about give before you get for a long time, and has now written a book on the topic. And I think it evolved in what we called it, but it was always the same idea, which was if we can be helpful to somebody else without having anything in particular that we're expecting to get back from that, other than sort of maybe something good will happen in the future for some reason that we don't understand. That became an important part of the concept of a mentorship driven accelerator. So we invest a little bit of capital, and more importantly, a lot of people invest their time and their energy. They lend social capital. They make introductions. They spend time with these really promising founders. But what are they getting from it? They don't really know. They hope their startup community gets better. Some of them, of course, end up getting a job or end up making an investment, or end up even being the CEO, right, of some
Yeah.
of these companies. Or all those stories exist, but they don't go into it with that mindset. And I think that has become the secret weapon of the most successful startup communities in the world. A lot of the places where we operate, they have this mentality of I'll just be helpful and we'll see where it goes, especially towards founders and entrepreneurs. So I do think that's been an important part of it, but there are other elements. Some of it is luck and some of it is hard work as well.
Definite hard work, a lot of resilience and grit in there. But I do love that. That's one thing I admire so much about you both and the work you've put out is just that give first mentality. And to me, that is the only way you can work within the family office industry. It's so trust-based, relationship-driven, and I'm really grateful to my mentor, Ron Diamond, who has always been a generous thought leader. When I struggled from imposter syndrome and had to learn from someone, I would just tune into his podcasts and, I'd listen to him in the car. I think my kids are experts by now from that experience. But, I got the bravery to ask him, I think like the first time 3 years ago, if he would be featured on one of these educational series. And there was no real motivation other than my own curiosity to learn and to share that wisdom with the greater community. And the advice he gave me was the give, ask framework. And he recommended to the audience, I think it's called Give First, a book that I immediately ran out and bought. And now I want to buy yours. And I do think to gift people with that knowledge of how to show up. And especially, I love that it's created so much success in what you've built. And I'm trying to help people understand to work with family offices. It's long term, and you can't just send something cold and transactional. It's not. It's that energy. So I don't know. It's something I think you just show up and you lead. And so I told Ron, in his this year's most recent workshop, I've sold my company and now I've entered this landscape. It's uncomfortable. It's large. It feels unfamiliar. But how I can give is by teaching and helping lead. And if I can be a mentor to others, then that's my way of giving. So it's created lots of success in my own small way. But I appreciate that you guys have been leading this way for years and that you share that through your writing. And I love that translates so well in what you built in the family office community. So bridging that gap and talking about the family office community, I remember even in a conversation with Ron, he argued, I don't think families should invest in venture. Many of them have made their wealth, they have their expertise, they should stay in their lane. But I think when done properly through the right frameworks and the right partners, there's a lot of great that wealth can unlock. And so I'd love to hear your perspectives on your experience to date working with family offices. There's once you've seen one, and so it's a little cliche, but it's true. What does it look like, and how do you navigate those waters and finding the right family office partners and helping to kind of educate them?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with a couple thoughts. I mean, it's a pretty core audience for us. I mean, our what we do is early stage and highly diversified, and I think that's what a lot of individual angel investors miss, and maybe some family offices miss, is that in any asset class, diversification matters a lot. And I think venture has got this reputation as this very risky asset class, and it can be. But at the same time, I think there's a way to practice it that really doesn't have the same level of risk through diversification. So if I meet a new angel investor, the first thing I tell them is, how many angel investments are you going to make? 3? It's not going to work, right? Unless you're really, really lucky. 10, 20, not enough. How do you make hundreds or thousands of them in a portfolio approach over a long period of time that's really consistent? And in that model, it's actually pretty hard to lose, right? You've got to be extra good at being bad to lose in that model. And so I think that's what we talk about with family offices, is working with a highly diversified pool of opportunities. Of course, you want to find direct opportunities to invest in. Those are going to emerge from this diversified pool. But it doesn't have to be a risky type of asset if you practice it in that way.
I think another piece of it is that there's an enormous amount of opportunity for learning from a family office perspective that then can develop into a focused longer term strategy. So one of the challenges with venture capital investing and being an investor in VC firms, or being a direct investor in technology companies at any stage, is having a good understanding of how it fits within your strengths as a family office, your goals in terms of not just return characteristics, but the kind of things you want to do, versus it just being a random phenomena that's a result of whatever comes inbound through your network or through somebody else. So like, if you want to take it to the extreme case, I don't think in 2026, when I was a kid 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 45 years ago, let's put it there. I just turned 60. So when I was a teenager, like, there used to be this idea of stock pickers.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to college and sort of hearing about this idea of people who were stock pickers, and they were at investment banks, and they might have even been called investment firms, and like this whole notion of who has a hot tip on what stock should I invest. We're so far from that kind of investing in 2026 in broadly writ the public markets. And yeah, sure, I have a hot tip. I know something. Like, whenever I hear something like that, I mostly just run the other way. I think that has happened in the private markets, and especially at the early stages, where there's this sort of randomness that comes to you because it's from a friend, or maybe it's from somebody you think is a trusted resource, or maybe it's from somebody who's a promoter of something. And it's impossible, if you haven't built any muscle memory, to evaluate this stuff. And consequently, I think investing in funds, having a small percentage of your allocation to those funds, but doing it in a way where you're viewing those funds as learning relationships as you build the strategy over time, is really important. It's also worth noting, everybody in the venture capital industry is in the top decile of performance. Like all performance related things, there's some element that it's all just bullshit. Like, it doesn't actually, whatever the metric that people are anchoring you on, what really matters is long-term performance. And I gave you $1, and how many dollars did you give me back? And so all the intermediate illiquid measurements don't really matter that much, even though everybody markets their performance based on that. And then, of course, the SEC makes you put a thing that says, past performance is no indication of future performance. And as somebody who's been investing as a VC and in funds since the 1990s, I can guarantee that that statement is true. And that understanding over a long period of time that there are cycles and that there are ups and downs, and that the relationships that you're building with whoever the investment managers are is really powerful signal, but that signal isn't indirect. You have to have the direct experience to understand who's really good and who's not, versus who just got lucky on a thing, and then back to it fitting within whatever your strategy is. So if I tie it all the way back to where you started, like the idea of stay in your lane, or stay in your lane for the majority of your assets if you want, but experiment and learn and play around with new things, but in a way that creates maximum learning over time, rather than in a way that's just random and reactive to whatever comes at you from whomever, or whatever seems hot today. Because by the time it's hot and you're there, it's probably too late.
Yeah. And I think what I love about working within the family office industry is so many times they're not too tied to the trends. They often are looking at the things that align with the values, and they're thinking more in terms of generations. And I love that. I think right now, longevity and mental health, and there's just so many exciting things, and they really have the opportunity to change the future for the better, with that approach and that long-term perspective. But with those cycles, sometimes it feels so easy. Everyone's winning. And then when you're not winning, having the right systems, the right partners, the right processes.
Yeah. Well, I've seen this over and over again. And it's two things. And it links to a thing you just said, Danielle. The two things are when everything is super hot, then everybody rushes in. And then when things fall apart, everybody rushes out. And it's, the classic inverse of when everybody's fearful, be greedy, and when everybody's greedy, be fearful, Warren Buffett philosophy. So, a lot of cliches we could play around with here, but it leads to a thing that you said that I want to underscore. If the only goal of the family is to make money and make more money, ignore everything else I'm going to say. Everything I say from this point forward is irrelevant. In fact, I don't know why you're here. You're wasting your time listening to us. If your only goal is to make more money, your goal set probably has other characteristics. It could be something to do with the geography. It could be something to do with the domain. It could be something to do with the technology. It could be something to do with any set of characteristics that are defining for what you're trying to accomplish. If the only one is, I have a pile of money and I want to make more money, none of this matters. But if you have a broader goal set, use that broader goal set and use innovation and investing at the early stages to advance that. And I have a line I've been using for a very long time when I talk to people that are trying to think about investing in early stage companies, especially as an angel investor. It applies to family offices as well, is just think of this early stage investing as for-profit philanthropy. If you have a philanthropic focus in your community, or you have a philanthropic focus in the arts or the environment or education or health or whatever, doesn't matter. You invest your money in these initiatives through your philanthropic energy into these nonprofits that you expect to get not a financial return for, but a return in what they're doing, and you get a tax deduction for it. Just view this as investing in the innovation economy. If the companies fail, of which many do,
Right.
you've actually helped the innovation cycle because the founders have learned and have grown from it. And a lot of times, even if the companies fail, an innovation occurs and you've learned and you get your tax deduction. If
Wow.
it succeeds, you get double your money, 5 times your money, 10 times your money, 100 times your money. You just get more money to continue to reinvest that way. So it's a philosophical frame of reference when you've achieved wealth of what you want to do with that wealth. And for me, at 60, the philosophy of it matters to me more than compounding more money. Like, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Danielle, I even tie it back to the origin story of Techstars. I think that's how Brad was thinking of Techstars when he decided to invest in it, that it was for-profit philanthropy. And he said things early on, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? We make some new friends and, we try some stuff in Boulder. And, it's one that turned out to work, and he probably has learned a bunch from it. I know I've learned a bunch from him and all these companies and all that experience, and it's created value. But I think if it hadn't, it still would have made the Boulder startup community better, and he still would have learned something. And so I think that was the mindset that led him to something interesting in our case, but I think probably in many others.
Wow. You're both such wonderful speakers. There's so much like profound wisdom. I'm taking notes avidly over here. I think the mindset is so important, and you guys have seen so many startups. You've worked with so many founders. For me personally, the fear of failure. But anytime I've failed, I've learned so much. And so it's so refreshing to just hear you speak so openly and honestly about failure, but how not even on a personal level, like that failure teaches everyone collectively and things advance. You need people to be willing to be risk takers. Even if you fail, you learn, you get back up. And so that is just a very refreshing takeaway. I will definitely take with me. But talking about mindset and the founder, and all of these startups that you guys are looking at up close, what patterns are you seeing repeating? Is there a particular characteristic quality that you're kind of betting out?
For Techstars, I think when we look at founders, it's so early. There's very little data to go off of around, the progress they have. They typically have no revenue or very, very little. Typically have no customers or very few. And so the mantra that we use when we're evaluating opportunities is, looking at 6 things in order: team, 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 market, progress, and idea. Team is so important. We say it 3 times. And I think it's even more true in this age of AI that we're entering. The founders and their grit and their intrinsic internal motivation, right? What they're trying to do and change in the world, and their why, turn out to matter almost more than anything. And so when you meet a founder, like, when I met the first employee, original CEO of Uber, right? Like, he had a vision for how the world was going to work and how transportation was going to work, and it was very clear vision, and he was very motivated to make it happen. And fortunate to meet that person at that time and get involved. And so many of the stories are like that, where there's just something that they want to change in the world, and they're either frustrated with it, annoyed with it. They just want to take something that sucks and make it not suck, right? Like, that's how they're thinking about it.
That fire, you can't, yeah.
Yeah, we call it unsucking the thing, right? They just want to unsuck whatever it is. That's what entrepreneurship is. And just taking a chance on those people that have that motivation and also have the talent. So that's team, team, team. And then market, is it a market that we want to be investing in? We don't want to invest in every market. Do we think something interesting is going on in that market? Progress, because we've learned something over the years, that entrepreneurs don't actually do much. They don't make progress, but entrepreneurs do. They break through brick walls and make progress. And so if we don't see progress, it's not interesting. Some kind of progress. And then idea, we like to put last to show how little we care about it. But idea is kind of interesting. We know it's going to change. the fact that you're working on something that's kind of interesting is probably good. So that's kind of our early filter. And then it's just, falling in love with the founders and wanting to spend time with them and believing in them and supporting them in any way that we can with this network that we put together, and a little bit with the capital that we put together. So that's our filter at a high level.
I love those 6 things. Do you have something to add, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many investments I've made, but it's a lot. And I don't know how many people I've met with over the last, 35 years around investing, but it's a lot, a lot, a lot. I've evolved to, I only really care about 2 things, and I can usually decide within the first 15 minutes whether I'm interested in investing in something or not. And those 2 things are very, very simple. One is, was the person or the team that I'm talking to put on planet Earth to work on this problem right now?
Mm.
It doesn't have to be for the rest of their life, but right now, is this the thing that they were put on this planet to work on? And that comes through pretty easily. It's hard to fake that, and it's hard to fake that, especially 4 questions in. You can determine whether the people are functionally obsessed with what they're doing or not. And then the second is, do I care about what they're doing? Is this thing interesting to me?
Mhm.
So and I don't have to be a daily user of it. I just have to have some affinity for it. And the reason for that is I've been an investor in so many companies that I didn't care about over the years. Every single company I've ever invested in has had a near-death experience.
Oh, wow.
Many have died,
Yeah.
right? Many of the companies that I've been involved in have failed. And failure sucks. There's nothing, it's painful, it's miserable, but it's part of the experience. And, the learning how to navigate through failure is key. And of course, a successful business is just an endless series of experiments, many of which fail. So even if the overall business succeeds, you have a lot of failure along the way that as a leader, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you have to navigate through. And so, for me, one of the really important things is, if I don't care about the business, when everything's going fine, great, it's working. It doesn't matter. But when things really are not working, when you enter that zone of near-death experience, or you're in the near-death experience, if you don't care that much about it, it's really hard to keep your head in it. It's really hard to put the effort against it, to try to help navigate out of that near-death experience. And again, cycle back, every single successful company I've been involved in has had at least one near-death experience. And these aren't like, oh, I broke my arm. It's like, you're laying on the ground bleeding out, and you're just not sure whether you're going to make it or not.
God.
And, I challenge any founder that's been successful to be honest and not say that they've had one of those experiences. And many of them are exogenous. They're things that you didn't see coming and had nothing to do with anything you or the company did. It was a macroeconomic dynamic. It was a structural change in the way something works that affects your business. It was a regulatory shift. It was a competitive thing. It was just like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And so those 2 characteristics to me are so critically important. Were the people working on this business put on planet Earth now to work on this, or put on planet Earth to work on this now? And do I care?
I love that. We need David's golden rays, which we don't see in his frame right now, to come down. Like, it gives me goosebumps. It's amazing. There are just these opportunities, these people and places. And even with the failures, I feel like there's so many incredible successes where, had that failure not rocked their world, taken their ego away, and made them start again in a different frame, taking those lessons, like, we wouldn't have some of the greatest probably companies today. And my husband, the failure of our first career made us leave California. We always thought we'd come back, and then you see what real estate gets you somewhere else. And it was like, okay, and we completely rebuilt. I did not come from finance or family offices, but it's like that journey, it turned into our greatest success. And I think it's encouraging, because I think in the moment it can feel so dark and you can bear such a tremendous weight. And it's just really encouraging to hear, like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a reason for all of it. Cody mentioned he's got a great question from the audience, so I will hold for a moment. Gilbert, thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your question. As a founder currently navigating the Techstars application process for health AI, what is the single most common mistake you see technical founders making when transitioning from building the product to selling the enterprise vision? Love that.
In health and AI specifically, well, it's an interesting moment, of course, with AI, and I think there's an awful lot of software that's being created really quickly now. And the question is, are you, really building an asset, right? That isn't going to be easy for, that healthcare provider to build themselves or get somewhere else. We're entering a phase where it's effectively free or very near free to create any software very quickly. And I think thinking about, what do I have that really, is defensible long term is sort of the question of the moment. So every founder is getting sick of every VC saying, well, what's your moat? What protects your castle? I think at the intersection of health and AI, there are very real things that protect you over time, like humans in the loop that need to be there in healthcare, right? To actually administer the healthcare, or regulatory clearances, or just lots of complex data. And so I think it's being really clear-eyed about what your very specific value proposition is, and how that is going to be defensible to an organization that you're trying to get into and do business with. Because we a year or two ago, we're living in an age where you could create software and have some really cool stuff and say, well, that's my story, right? I've got this cool software. That doesn't work anymore, because cool software is pretty easy to displace. So I think in making that transition generally, right, it's just being really clear-eyed about what the long-term value is that you're delivering to them, and being the best in the world at whatever that is.
Awesome answer. Thank you. Thanks for the question. It's interesting because AI was kind of tied into where my stream of thought was going, around the 6 qualities, David, you shared: team, team, team. When you're early, you probably don't have the funding to have a huge team. And, through Techstars, do you help maybe these passionate founders that meet the now and the why and the vision and the fire, but maybe aren't great leaders or don't have a team yet? And then twofold, I'm curious how AI is shifting the necessity to have really big teams. Are you seeing, Brad or David, companies be able to scale faster and more leanly?
Yeah, I'll take the last one first. I mean, I think we're all waiting for the 0-person unicorn. We're seeing the 10-person unicorns all the time.
Crazy.
And the 1-person unicorn, I don't know if it's happened, but it's going to happen very soon if it hasn't.
Yeah.
And then will the AI itself create the next unicorn? Probably. But I think in this time, I think what we do to support them, it's the human part, right? It's all
Mhm.
these people, this army of people who give first, right? That are willing to transfer social capital and trust. And it's very hard for AI to help somebody through a founder breakup, or create trust with a target customer or a downstream investor that wants to look at a company. And so I think it is changing for us when we see, I think a few years ago, we used to talk about it as, we like technical heavy teams, a couple of tech founders, maybe one business founder in there. And, they have to be really good at the software part, because you wouldn't start or invest in an auto repair shop if it didn't have any mechanics, right? But that is changing a bit. I think someone who would play the role of what I now call an orchestrator
Yeah.
rather than a developer is becoming really important. That's someone who has deep domain knowledge of the area that they're in, but also has enough technical skill. Maybe not even necessarily a developer today. Brad and I could both laugh about this, because we both used to be developers, and now it's really
Oh,
easy for us to
yeah.
create software again, right? Because we understand the technology and the database and the platforms. But we don't have to be as up on the technology or as deep in the languages or the current platforms, because that is really AI assisted today. And so many things are going to go that way. And so it does allow us to take a bet on an orchestrator that we wouldn't have been able to take a bet on a few years ago because they needed to have really strong engineering talent at the beginning. And the strong engineering talent helps, right? It keeps things on the rails and all of that. And we still care about that in our team assessment. But that dynamic is changing a bit.
Interesting. I love using the word orchestrator. That's a great, especially as things evolve at the pace they're evolving. So thinking about the founders, and I know we spoke about a lot about the different characteristics, but the journey that they go through, the growth, some of the things that you see make them succeed or fail within the Techstars program specifically, and then what, I guess, exiting the program? Is that what is the life cycle?
Yeah, well, I think the 3-month accelerator experience it really should just be the beginning of their exposure to what I think of as Techstars for life of the company. The network is there to support them throughout their whole life cycle. They have a large 5,000 other companies that want to buy their product potentially, and thousands and thousands of mentors that want to help that company be successful, not just for this really intense acceleration phase, but for the life of that company. And we're always figuring out ways to do more and more post that original 90-day experience where they go through this heavy mentorship period.
Yeah.
And so I think it's both, right? It's
Mhm.
getting a lot of very aggressive hands-on support during the acceleration
Yeah.
program, and of course the capital, and then it's a lifelong network that you're a part of. And that, I think, that is the opportunity for us to do even more with that, in this age where we can create agents that help plug people together at the right moment and find other customers in the network and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of focus on that today.
Yeah. I think, data, metrics, statistics, they're all valuable, but it's the ecosystem, it's the relationships, that interconnectivity, especially in this day and age. So amazing the way, yeah, you kind of create this little cohort that goes on and does amazing things. And on the
And
flip side, yeah,
they do business together for a long time, right? They recombine and they form new companies, and it's sort of a trust network, right? Of
yeah,
people who've been through this shared experience and have the same set of values,
yeah,
things like give first, and have benefited from that and want to give that back to the next groups.
yeah,
So it's a pretty powerful sort of virtuous cycle.
yeah. I know Ann Olson from Return on Good introduced us, David. I mean, you both have been following your work. You need no introduction, but she did. She was so generous, and I understand that she's a mentor within your program. And I'm sure even the mentors probably have great connectivity. What does the mentor program look like, and what does it involve to join?
Yeah, well, so it's an ultimate expression of give first, right? It's someone saying, I have some experience and I want to share that with a network of promising, founders. And we're funding hundreds of companies a year, and there's 5,000 of them in the network that need help. And so someone comes forward and says, I'd like to be a mentor. The first thing we do is we try to find a company that they can help in that
Oh,
broad
that's excellent.
portfolio. And Anne has become an example of someone who's sort of reached the all-star level, right? They're voted on by the founders they work with as the best of the best, and just the
Wow.
most give first in the network. And that's what makes the engine go. That's what makes Techstars itself work. It's there are a few hundred of us in the company, right, and around the company, but it's a cast of many, many thousands
Yeah.
of alumni who've been through these programs that give back,
Yeah.
mentors, and many of the investors around the system, have this mindset that Brad was talking about. Like, I want to help in a context where I have peers, I meet interesting people, and the opportunities are all pretty high quality because, we're only taking 1% of the companies that apply and investing in them. And so it's an automatic filter for people. It's something meaty to dig into and do together. So it creates new social dynamics.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot in it for them, but it's pure, for-profit philanthropy, perhaps, for them.
I love that for-profit philanthropy. And Brad, so what really struck me in hearing you, David, kind of talk about this connectivity, the mentorship, I think of founders. When my husband sold his business to private equity, like the culture he created for 14 years slowly got eroded, and his passion and his purpose. And he didn't expect the day he left just to have this overwhelming kind of like loss of purpose. And so I feel like having this mentorship program almost like gives this second opportunity that just has a ripple effect for then helping these younger ones. And Brad, actually, one of the ways I got to first hear you live but virtually, I was helping moderate. So you didn't see me, but I got to see you on the big screen at the Real Mental Health Foundation. And I'm just a huge fan, a huge advocate. And everything you spoke about and the work that you've done in that space is really meaningful. And I just think, for founders, it can feel very lonely. And when you've exited, it can feel lonely. So, I mean, you guys help on both ends of that coin. And I think that's really beautiful. If you'd like to share anything about your work in mental health and what it means to you, I'd love to be able to hear that.
For me, a big part of a thread that's woven through everything I've been involved in for the last decade or so has been trying to destigmatize the issues around mental health. I've been public about my own struggles. I've got obsessive compulsive disorder that I manage well, but was clinically diagnosed in my 20s, and have struggled with anxiety and depression, and have had very significant depressive episodes that have lasted for more than 3 months, multiple times. And when I had one in 2013, I was writing constantly, was blogging all the time, and I decided to just blog openly about what was going on.
Love that.
And there was an interesting response that then caused me to be motivated to put energy into this. As I heard from, I don't know the number, but over 100 founders and CEOs whose names would be known. Like,
Yeah.
If I made the more, I heard from more than that, but there were at least 100 in the list who I didn't know.
Yeah.
They reached out to me in different points in time in different ways, and many of them, the context was some version of that I was the first person that they'd ever shared some of their struggles with.
Wow.
And as I sort of dug into that, I had a couple of friends who had also been open about their struggles with mental health. Jerry Colonna was one. He was a VC with Fred Wilson in the 90s at Flatiron Partners, and now runs a coaching firm called Reboot that I think is Jerry's one of the best CEO coaches in the world. And another person, Paul English, who was a very successful entrepreneur in Boston and created Kayak. Tracy Kidder, who is one of my favorite novelists, favorite writers, who just passed recently, like in the last week or two, wrote a book about Paul. I'm not going to get the name right, but it's like, getting hit by a truck of money or something like that. And
someone will look it up and put in the chat.
Talks very openly. And this is a real exploration of Paul's own struggles around bipolar disorder and the impact of him as an entrepreneur, both positive and negative, and on all the people around him. And I just decided that, the problem was not anything to do with the underlying mental health issues. We all have issues. We're all bad chemicals. We're all screwed up.
We're human.
We're human. And we have good days and we have bad days, and we say stupid things and we do things that hurt other people, and we make mistakes, and we have our own emotional processing, whether it's work related or personal, or trauma from our childhood or trauma from other life experiences, and how we incorporate all that into whatever's going on. That's just part of the existence. And entrepreneurs aren't exempt from that.
Right.
And in fact, founders carry that load more than many in different ways because of where they sit in the pressure of the creation of a thing and the context of what success looks like. You talked about imposter syndrome, like that's a powerful input into it, but there's so many pieces of it. So I just decided that I would put energy into being open about it to try to destigmatize the issue. not, oh, look at me, I solved this problem or conquered that. It's more having people have understanding that it's okay, that it's part of
Yeah.
the life experience, that you can navigate your way through it, that you can be successful, that there are things that you can do to work on it. And I think that one of the things that has been a truck full of money,
There
that's
we go. Thanks, Cody.
fabulous. I mean, it's a great book. It's a really fun entrepreneurial story, but it's very powerful because you get a different glimpse into somebody's soul that is amazing. I mean, Paul is an amazing guy, and he's tortured,
Yeah.
and he has self-awareness of it. And as a result of the self-awareness, he's done a lot of things for himself, for his community, for other people around him that have improved their existence. We know many people in, very successful business people, very successful in all aspects of life. And you can look at the person and see them be very successful and say, that person is tortured and they are not addressing any of the issues. And, my wife, Amy, likes to say, when you see somebody like that inflicting pain on other people, they're inflicting their own pain on other people rather than actually dealing with their issues.
Yeah.
Not a judgment, like decide what you want to do. But for me, I decided I wanted to both understand it better, help destigmatize it, and
Yeah.
frankly, just learn about myself so that I could have a better life. Because it is no fun being depressed. It is no fun carrying around a lot of extra anxiety about a thing, especially things that are totally exogenous and random.
Yeah. Well, thank you for speaking so openly and doing that hard work, but then talking about it in a way that encourages others and makes them feel less alone. I think that's why I love about what Sean's doing through the reel. And I first heard him through Ron Diamond, and then I just felt so connected and drawn. We did a masterclass interview, and it was at a time I was going through my own grief. I had lost my mom so suddenly to cancer, but it was a long story. There was a lot of beauty because she was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But the part that I was grieving over was the fact that she was a mother of four. She worked her whole life. She give first, like to a T, a teacher, beautiful woman. I'm one of four. She struggled with manic depression and bipolar, and our family never talked about it. And I just felt that we owed it to her. And I do not want my children to live with that stigma. So I celebrate her through, being an active participant. I'm an executive ally. I'm a huge fan. And I just thank you, Brad and David, the way you guys help destigmatize. It's so important. I think there's so many wealthy families who don't want to talk about this. And you think if they do, the continuity, the success, and that kind of brings me back to even venture and helping educate and involve the next gen and how that can help them feel a purpose and a role and connect to the family in greater ways.
Well, and that's a loaded one that we don't have in the last couple of minutes. Don't have.
No, I know.
The history of generational wealth is, the second generation, the third generation, the fourth generation. You don't have to watch much TV. You don't have to watch Succession. It's comedic, but it's a profound part of our existence, and it's a massive opportunity combined with a massive burden.
Yeah.
And navigating those, I've heard many times, I would say people talk about it with different layers of judgment is the best word I could use. I'm trying to think of a better word than judgment, but I don't have one. And I think one of the powerful things for anyone as an individual, but a family that has wealth, is to try to figure out how to engage without judgment of each other, and to recognize that, part of our existence, I think parents who are not good parents are often still trying their hardest, or they're doing the thing, even if they're hurting their kids, they're doing the thing that they think is helping their kids. Not universally true, but if you can somehow step back from the judgment and observe what's happening, and then try to figure out how to engage in a better way, a more constructive way, it can be very powerful. And it's especially loaded when money's involved, because money is a gigantic control lever for a lot of people. And, it's one that, the more you get tangled up in what it means, and the further away you get from the source, so generation 2, generation 3, the harder it becomes to talk about things that are deeply layered patterns. And so there's a lot of power in exploring, experimenting, learning. And I've got a lot of great examples from my life, from friends and people that I know who've done an incredible job with their kids, or the third generation, in terms of getting them involved with the wealth that they have in constructive ways that allowed them as younger people to then figure themselves out
Yes.
in the context of what that was, and determine what was important to them in the context of
Wow.
the wealth, rather than having the wealth define them, or the wealth constrain them, or the relationship with their parents limit them.
Empowering and freeing, and it's almost like placing the trust and the opportunity to make something for yourself, to find your own name. Ron had pulled up a great question, it was all around what we were talking about, but he asked for advice, and it was in terms of, founders and psychology, but I'd also love the next gen in the psychology. When you've kind of inherited a lot of this, or you feel stuck, or, any advice to, I mean, those are two different scenarios, but when you're kind of just struggling psychologically in either of those traps, the founder pressure, or kind of just the next gen, maybe feeling lost with the wealth and direction.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for two things. One is real business coaching. I've been a marathon runner for a long time. I don't think I could have run any marathons without having a coach. And it doesn't matter, and I'm not trying to win anything, or whatever. But having somebody that helps you in a meaningful way matters. I think that's very true in a business context. And I'm also an enormous advocate for actual therapy, whether it's from a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but a real clinical process that lasts a long period of time. It's not I need to fix a thing and I need 3 months to fix a thing. It's, I'm going to go work on myself for a while. And part of work on myself means I'm going to understand all of this programming that I've had up to this point in my life, and what it means to me and what I want to do with it. So, I encourage that as the starting point, and not either or, but both. I think it's a huge investment of time in yourself, and very valuable.
Wow. And when you unlock that, you can give more to those around you, but you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to put on your life vest first. I'm looking at our clock, and I know you guys have a very important call. David, you were about to chime in. I want to be really respectful for you guys.
It's fine. I was just going to add, like, I think networks like what you've created, and for entrepreneurs who are feeling this, like what Brad has in his world and what Techstars does for them, like, it can feel like you're alone, and you are definitely not. There's someone else out there you can talk to about what you're going through. And I think it's just, encouraging people to reach out and take advantage of those networks.
Amazing. Well, you both have, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like we probably didn't even cover the long list of questions I always set out to do, but it has just been wonderful. I let these things head where they want. And thank you to the audience. Thank you for showing up and being curious and sharing your questions. Wishing you, David, a wonderful time in Italy, success on your call to come, and hopefully this will be the first of many conversations we have together.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.